Huh? What are you doing in my swamp?
Hello everybody, this is Ogre Boy, and I'm going to be doing my ranking for all 7 movies that John Travolta was in during the 1980s. I did this with his 70s movies as well, where I reviewed all of the movies from the decade and then ranked them and everything. So I've recently just got done doing all of his 80s movies, so it's time to rank them. So, the 80s was a pretty rough decade for John Travolta's career. He had kind of just started to lose popularity. He wasn't doing very good. And a lot of these movies I think are kind of underrated. There are a couple of them that I think are just alright, but most of them I think are pretty decent and everything. But it was a pretty easy ranking to do, though. Unlike some of the other decades, this one was a pretty easy ranking, though. So I'm going to go ahead and get going on it. Coming in at number 7 is Two of a Kind. This is the one where he reunited with Olivia Newton-John, and in this movie God is wanting to destroy the world, and these angels convince God that they can make these two people who are complete opposites of each other, and they're not very good, likable people, fall in love and everything. And so the entire movie is pretty much about them trying to get them to be with each other. And it's a very weird movie. It's one that I really enjoy, though, for the most part. I think it's pretty good, but it's definitely not one of his best movies and everything. But the chemistry between him and Olivia Newton-John is still really good. They still work really well together, and it's an alright movie. It just isn't like a super great one and everything. So it's easily my least favorite out of his 80s movies. So Two of a Kind is number 7, and number 6 is Perfect. This is one that he did with Jamie Lee Curtis, where he's playing this journalist for, I think it's the New York Times, and he does this little is doing this little story piece on aerobics and stuff, and like there's a side story of him also investigating some crime stuff too, but like he forms this relationship with the aerobics instructor played by Jamie Lee Curtis, and John Travolta and Jamie Lee Curtis work really good together, and they have really great chemistry. And this is another one that, like with Two of a Kind, I really enjoy it. I think it's a pretty decent movie and everything. It just it's not one of my most favorites that he did in the 80s, but it is a fun movie. It does feel like an 80s movie, though. Like it just has that 80s feel to it, because the music and all that, it just, you can tell when this movie was made. But I think it's pretty enjoyable. Not super great, but it's good enough. So it's number 6, and number 5 is The Experts. This is a movie that was released direct to VHS in the late 80s, where two guys get taken to this town that is created by the Soviet Union to, I guess they're trying to learn about American culture, so they take these two guys to this town and everything, and it's like the town is stuck in the 1950s. It's really interesting movie. It's pretty funny, and it's the movie where John Travolta met Kelly Preston and everything, and they have really great chemistry in this movie. You can see their chemistry in this very well, and it's really entertaining. It's one that's kind of underrated. When I first saw it, I didn't really know what to think about it. Didn't really care for it a whole lot, but over the years, every time I rewatch it, I like it a little bit more and everything. So The Experts is number 5, and number 4 is Staying Alive. This is a sequel to Saturday Night Fever that has kind of just been swept under the rug. A lot of people absolutely hate this movie and everything, because Saturday Night Fever really didn't need a sequel, and I kind of agree. Like, they could have changed John Travolta's character's name and taken out a few little things, and this could have just been its own movie instead of being a sequel to Saturday Night Fever. And in this movie, Tony Manero was trying to make it on Broadway. He's still struggling with his life and everything, but he's in a different place and everything. I kind of like that, though. I kind of liked seeing him all these years later, seeing what he was up to. I think it actually was kind of cool, and I think it's a really good sequel that really doesn't get the credit it deserves, and I can understand why people don't like it, I guess, because I mean, it is a little bit more watered down, and there are some things like with the relationships in this movie that don't work very good, but for the most part I think it's pretty decent. Sylvester Stallone directed it. He did a good job with the directing and had some pretty good choreography, and I like the music in it. Not as good as the music in Saturday Night Fever. That's one thing that movie definitely has an advantage over on, but as far as unnecessary sequels go, this one is a pretty good one. So Staying Alive is number 4, and number 3 is Urban Cowboy. I really like this movie. I always have, although there are some things about it that I don't really care for. Like, I don't like that the way the relationship is written in here between his character and Deborah Winger's character, and I didn't really like how that was written, and everything. It kind of made him a little bit of a jerk and kind of unlikable, but at the same time you also kind of like him. It's just a mixed bag on that, but I love the music in here. It has some really great country songs, and as someone who's a big country music fan, I love the music in this movie, and I do think John Travolta did a really good job in here, and the chemistry between him and Deborah Winger is very good. They really work good together in this movie, and it's just kind of like one of those slice of life stories. It doesn't really have a whole bunch of stuff going on, but it's just really entertaining for what it is, and it's kind of predictable. You know how it's gonna go, but for what it is, it's a good movie. So Urban Cowboy is number 3, and number 2 is Look Who's Talking. I just watched this and reviewed it the other day, and I absolutely love Look Who's Talking. It's just such a fun, little heartwarming comedy. Every time I watch it, I always enjoy it. John Travolta and Kirstie Alley just work really great together. They have really great chemistry. And Bruce Willis is the voice of Baby Mikey, or he does like the voice of his thoughts and stuff. He's very good too, and it's just really entertaining. And it does kind of have a little bit of a slow start, but once it gets going, once John Travolta gets into the movie and everything, and his relationship with Kirstie Alley starts and everything, and the baby is born, it just kind of takes off from there. But like the first 15-20 minutes of it is a little slow, but aside from that, it's a really enjoyable movie, and I have a blast with it. I think it's really, really fun movie, and it has some special effects that don't hold up very well, but the story itself is pretty good and pretty enjoyable. So I really like this movie. So Look Who's Talking is number 2. And my number 1 favorite movie that John Travolta was in the 1980s is Blowout. This is a very, very underrated movie where John Travolta plays this sound editor for movies and stuff, and he's working on this movie and trying to get some sounds for this movie, and he hears this car have a blowout right as it crashes and stuff, and he gets tangled up in this conspiracy with these politicians and stuff. It's just a really, really great movie. And Brian De Palma directed this. They had re-teamed up after Carrie, and Nancy Allen also reunited with him, and they work really great together in this movie. And John Lithgow plays a villain in here. He doesn't have a lot of screen time, but when he is on screen, he's just absolutely great. Very, very intimidating, and it's easily probably my favorite performance of John Travolta from this decade and stuff, even though I really loved him in Urban Cowboy and Look Who's Talking. I think his performances in those were both really great as well. But this one to me is his best performance of that decade. He was just really good in this movie. And this one kind of just gets swept under the rug because it was released in that time in his career when people just didn't care about him as much. He wasn't doing as good and everything. And I love this movie. I think it does have its fan base. A lot of movie buffs love this movie, but it doesn't get the credit it deserves. It's a very underrated movie, and it's easily my favorite movie of his from the 80s and everything. And I could say that pretty much all of these movies are underrated to an extent, because I really enjoy all of them. There's not really one of these that I think is necessarily bad or anything, because they're all really, for the most part, enjoyable. Some of them are more enjoyable than others, but it was a pretty decent decade for him, even though it was kind of a dark time in his career, because he was having a lot of struggles there throughout this decade. In the first half of the 90s, he was struggling, but he made some pretty good movies in this decade that I think are pretty enjoyable. So anyway, let me know in the comments how you would rank John Travolta's movies from the 80s, if you've seen all of them. If you haven't, just tell me which ones you have seen and which one's your favorite and least favorite. And hope you enjoyed this video, and have a good day, everybody.